Weihnachten. Wenn ich jetzt an das Essen denke. Wir haben Verwandte in Schlesien. Bei uns gibt's immer schlesische Weißwürstchen mit Kartoffeln, Sauerkraut und ordentlich.
Did you know that some of Italy's most powerful war films were banned, censored, or nearly erased because they revealed truths the nation wasn't ready to face? From stories of cowardice to accusations against the Vatican, these films shattered the myths of honor, unity, and resistance. They forced audiences to confront betrayal, silence, and complicity, subjects the government, the church, and even international allies wanted buried. Yet despite censorship and outrage, they survived. And together, they form a hidden history of post-war Italy, told not through textbooks, but through cinema tonight. We'll explore 10 Italian war films that were silenced, condemned, or feared, yet still managed to change the way the world remembers the past. Rome. Open City, 1945. The streets of Rome had barely cleared of rubble when Roberto Rossellini picked up his camera. Rome Open City wasn't polished or staged. It was carved directly out of lived experience. Using non-actors and bombed-out buildings, Rossellini captured the cruelty of Nazi occupation and the courage of those who resisted. Yet, it was no patriotic rallying cry. The film showed betrayal, executions, and ordinary Italians collaborating with their oppressors. The Catholic Church condemned it as sacrilegious, while officials worried it would tarnish Italy's fragile reputation abroad. But audiences, both in Italy and internationally, recognized its power. This was truth without varnish. The film didn't just launch Italian neo-realism, it reminded the world that cinema could carry the weight of history itself. Paisan, 1946. If Rome Open City was a cry, Paisan was a meditation. Structured as 6 episodes, the film followed awkward, sometimes tragic encounters between American soldiers and Italians. There were no neat victories here. Instead, Rossellini gave audiences culture clashes, failed friendships, and even racial tensions, most daringly in the segment featuring African-American soldiers who encounter prejudice from the very people they help liberate. U.S. officials tried to suppress the film, calling it anti-American. Italian censors demanded entire sections be cut, insisting it reflected poorly on a country struggling to rebuild. But Rossellini refused simplification. For him, the war's reality was not black and white, but human, fragile, and endlessly complicated. Paisan unsettled governments, but it influenced generations of filmmakers. It showed that even in victory, war leaves behind confusion, mistrust, and silence. La Grande Guerra, 1959. By the late 1950s, Italy's official war story was one of nobility and sacrifice. Then came Mario Monicelli with La Grande Guerra. Instead of heroes, he gave us 2 conscripts, played by Alberto Sordi and Vittorio Gassman, who blunder their way through World War I. More interested in avoiding combat than winning glory. Their cowardice, their lies, even their humor, struck audiences as dangerously close to reality. Veterans groups denounced the film. Newspapers accused Monicelli of mocking Italy's fallen. Censors debated whether to block its release entirely. But when the film finally reached the public, something unexpected happened. Italians laughed and then recognized themselves in the laughter. It went on to win the Golden Lion at Venice. What officials saw as humiliation, audiences understood as truth. Sometimes the most devastating portrait of war is not tragedy, but comedy. General della Rovere, 1959. Rossellini returned with another provocation. General della Rovere told the story of a conman, played masterfully by Vittorio De Sica, who is arrested and forced by the Nazis to impersonate a resistance leader. At first, his deception is pure survival. But surrounded by genuine partisans, something shifts. The fraud discovers real courage, embracing the role he once faked, and goes to his death alongside true heroes. The film struck nerves everywhere. To some, it suggested that Italy's wartime heroes might have been opportunists. Veterans groups demanded censorship, arguing it blurred the line between heroism and treachery. But Rossellini's point was deeper. Heroism is not a label, but a choice, sometimes made in the unlikeliest of places. Audiences abroad praised it as one of Rossellini's finest achievements, proving again that Italy's cinema was willing to ask questions its politics could not. 2 Women, 1960. Few performances in cinema history carry the raw force of Sophia Loren in 2 Women, directed by Vittorio De Sica. The film follows a mother and her daughter trying to survive as the Allies advance through Italy. Their journey ends in brutal tragedy when both are assaulted by Moroccan soldiers serving with the French army. It was a story ripped from reality, atrocities known but rarely spoken aloud. The response was immediate outrage. American diplomats condemned it as propaganda. Italian politicians tried to suppress it, claiming it dishonored the liberation narrative. Censors demanded the violence be softened, but De Sica refused. What made the film unforgettable was Lorraine herself. Her performance earned Italy its first acting Oscar, immortalizing a story the nation wanted silenced. It was proof that even the most painful truths could not be erased once given voice on screen. 6. The 4 Days of Naples, 1962. Nanny Loy's The 4 Days of Naples chronicled the 1943 uprising, when ordinary citizens forced the Nazis out of the city. But rather than grand speeches or military strategies, Loy showed chaos, children hurling stones, women charging into the streets, workers grabbing whatever weapons they could. It was liberation not as legend, but as desperate, furious survival. Politicians recoiled. For years, the official narrative was that resistance was orderly, noble, and led by clear-eyed patriots. Here the uprising looked spontaneous, messy, even reluctant. Neo-fascist groups issued threats, and right-wing papers smeared the film. Yet audiences were gripped. It earned Oscar nominations and international acclaim. By focusing on the ordinary, Loy revealed something extraordinary, that freedom, however chaotic, is not given, it is seized. Kapò, 1960. Gillo Pontecorvo's Kapò was one of the first Italian films to confront the Holocaust. Its story follows a young Jewish girl who survives by becoming a Kapò, a prisoner tasked with supervising others, effectively collaborating with her captors. This moral ambiguity proved unbearable for many. Religious groups called it blasphemous. Critics claimed it crossed ethical lines, particularly in a famous tracking shot of a prisoner's suicide that was accused of aestheticizing horror. Yet that was precisely Pontecorvo's point. The Holocaust was not a place for easy distinctions of guilt and innocence. Survival itself was compromised, and every choice carried weight. Censors tried to bury the film, but it was nominated for an Academy Award. Even in controversy, it forced Italians and the world to reckon with questions they'd rather ignore. What would you do to survive? Massacre in Rome, 1973, starring Richard Burton. Massacre in Rome dramatized one of Italy's darkest wartime events, the Ardeatine Massacre, where Nazis executed 335 civilians in reprisal for a partisan attack. But what made the film explosive was not the massacre itself. It was the suggestion that Pope Pius X, fully aware of what was happening, chose silence. The Vatican condemned the film immediately. Churches called for boycotts. Some theaters faced bomb threats. The screenwriter, Robert Katz, was even convicted in Italian court for defaming religion. History has since confirmed the chilling plausibility of the film's accusation. By daring to ask what silence costs, Massacre in Rome turned cinema into a weapon, not against fascism, but against denial. The Garden of the Finzi-Continis, 1970. In The Garden of the Finzi-Continis, Vittorio De Sica turned Giorgio Bassani's novel into an elegy for Italy's Jewish community. The film begins with privilege and leisure, tennis matches in the sunlit garden of a wealthy family. Slowly, restrictions tighten, friendships fracture, and finally deportation arrives. The most unsettling detail: the arrests are carried out not by Germans but by Italian police. This alone broke one of Italy's most cherished myths, that fascism had been an imposition, not a collaboration. Politicians tried to block the film. Critics accused De Sica of reopening wounds, but it triumphed, winning the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. What Italy tried to deny, De Sica placed at the center of its cultural memory. Mère Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Pasolini's final film remains one of cinema's most infamous works. Set in the collapsing fascist republic of Salò, it depicts elites who abduct youth and subject them to degradation, torture, and death. For Pasolini, fascism was not just dictatorship. It was power at its most sadistic. The film was seized, banned, and denounced worldwide. Italian authorities declared it obscene. Abroad, it was prohibited in multiple countries. Weeks before its release, Pasolini was murdered under mysterious circumstances, cementing the film's aura of danger. To this day, critics remain divided. Some dismiss it as unwatchable. Others hail it as a masterpiece of political art. But all agree, no film more brutally stripped fascism of its mask. Salò was Pasolini's final act of defiance, ensuring that the horrors of power would never be forgotten. These films are more than cinema. They are battles fought with reels of celluloid instead of weapons. They reveal a country struggling not only with its history, but with its conscience. Censors, politicians, and even the Vatican tried to silence them, but silence never lasts. Today, these films endure, reminders that art's greatest power lies in its ability to disturb, to provoke and to force us to confront the truths we'd rather ignore. So the question remains, when a film unsettles us, should it be silenced, or is that the precise moment it matters most?